Commander Callan sat in the dimly lit command center of the Excalibur, staring at the holographic screen in front of him. The hum of the ship's engines filled the room, but his mind was far from the humdrum of space travel. A sense of unease had settled over him ever since the strange signal had been picked up by the ship's communication system. It was weak, fragmented, and filled with static, but the message was clear enough to send a chill down his spine. The Trorians are real, and they need our help. He had heard the rumors, of course. Stories about the Corians, an alien species thought to be wiped out by the ruthless Gorath Empire decades ago. Their technology was advanced, but not enough to stop the Goraths, a brutal alien race that cared for nothing but conquest. The Corians were supposed to be lost in time, their worlds left in ruins. Humanity had long moved on, thinking they had been nothing more than a myth. But now something had changed. Captain Callan, Lieutenant Harper's voice interrupted his thoughts. She was standing at the communications station, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You need to see this." Callan pushed himself away from his seat and walked over to Harper. The holographic screen flickered, displaying a series of garbled symbols before the distorted image of an alien appeared. The face was unlike any he had seen before, angular with piercing eyes that seemed to glow in the flickering transmission. The voice was cracked, weak, as though the alien was struggling to speak. "Commander Callan, you must listen." The alien's voice trembled. "We are the last of the Corians. We are the outcasts, the forgotten. The Gorath Empire has returned. They are coming for us again, and we cannot fight back. You are our last hope. Please, please, help us." The transmission sputtered, and then a deep silence filled the room. Callan stood frozen, his heart racing. What was this? Why had the Trorians come to Earth for help after all this time? "Is this real?" Callan whispered, his voice barely audible. "It's real, sir," Harper replied, her voice tight. "We've cross-checked the signal. It's coming from the outer rim, far from any known Gorath-controlled systems. We think it's coming from one of their hidden colonies." Callan turned to the rest of the crew, who were now gathered around, equally stunned. For decades, humanity had focused on building its own strength, exploring the galaxy, and fending off various threats. But the Gorath Empire was something different. They were ruthless, and if they had truly returned, there was no telling what might happen. Callan took a deep breath. "Prepare the ship. We're heading to the outer rim. We can't waste any more time." Harper nodded, but a look of uncertainty flashed across her face. What if this is a trap? The Goraths have always been known for their deceitful tactics. Callan's eyes hardened. "It doesn't matter. If there's even a chance that the Trorians are out there, we need to find them. They could be the key to stopping the Goraths once and for all." The Excalibur hummed to life, and the crew moved with purpose, their faces grim as the ship powered up for its journey to the unknown. As they left the safety of their orbit, Callan couldn't shake the feeling that this mission was much more than just a rescue. It was a fight for survival. A fight that would not only determine the fate of the Corians, but perhaps of humanity itself. As the stars stretched before them, Callan couldn't help but wonder, were the Corians truly the outcasts they claimed to be, or was something far more dangerous stirring in the shadows of space? The unknown awaited them, and the only thing they knew for sure was that time was running out. The Excalibur cut through the darkness of space, its engines humming steadily as it made its way toward the unknown coordinates. Commander Callan stood at the helm, his eyes focused on the stars ahead. The message from the Trorians haunted him. Who were these people? Why had they sent out a distress signal after so many years? And most importantly, were they truly in danger? As the ship neared the outer rim of the galaxy, the tension in the command center grew thicker. The vast emptiness of space surrounded them, making everything feel even more isolated. Lieutenant Harper, always the optimist, glanced at Callan. "We're almost there, Commander. According to the coordinates, this planet is uncharted. No Gorath forces in the area," she said, though her voice held an undertone of uncertainty. The galaxy's outer rim was known for its isolation, a place few ventured into, even less so for humanity's allies. If the Chorians were truly hiding there, the risks were even higher than they imagined. "I hope it's not a trap," Callan muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. His mind raced, wondering what they would find on the other side of that jump. Then, the communication station blared to life, interrupting his thoughts. "Incoming signal," Harper called, quickly adjusting the frequency. The transmission was clear this time, but the voice on the other end was filled with an unmistakable sense of dread. "This is Captain Lyra of the Corian Exiles," the voice crackled. "You are not safe here. The Goraths. They're already here. The Empire is hunting us down. You must leave before it's too late." Callan's hand tightened on the controls. "Hold on," he ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. "Tell us where you are. We're coming in. There is no time." Lyra's voice cut through the static. "You must land on the secondary landing zone. The main settlement is compromised. They're everywhere." "We'll do our best. Sit tight, Lyra," Callan said, his jaw set. "We're on our way." As the ship continued toward the designated landing site, the tension among the crew was palpable. The Corians had been exiled, cast out from their homeworlds, forced to live in secrecy, isolated from the universe. The Gorath Empire was known for its ruthless methods of control, but even so, it was hard to imagine a force strong enough to push an entire species into hiding. And now, the Excalibur was about to uncover whatever was left of the Corians. The ship's alarms blared, pulling everyone back to the present. They had arrived. Approaching the planet's surface, Harper called out, "No sign of enemy ships. I'm preparing the landing sequence." Callan didn't speak. He knew better than to let his guard down. The quiet, empty planet was the perfect hiding place for a species on the run, but it could also be the perfect trap. As the Excalibur descended through the atmosphere, the planet below them came into view. The landscape was rugged, covered in dense forests and rocky terrain. It looked like a world untouched by civilization, but Callan knew better. "Commander," Lieutenant Harper said, her voice tight, "I'm picking up something. A massive energy spike near the landing zone. Could be weapons." "Brace for impact," Callan ordered, gripping the edge of his chair as the ship descended toward the unknown. The Excalibur's landing was rough, but the ship's shields held strong as it touched down on the planet's surface. The crew quickly gathered their gear and prepared to exit the ship. The air was thick with tension, each crew member looking to Callan for direction. "Stay alert," Callan instructed. "We don't know what we're walking into. Remember, these Trorians may be allies, but they've been hiding for years. We don't know what they've had to do to survive." As the ramp lowered, a strange, almost eerie silence greeted them. No sounds of wildlife, no movement, just the heavy weight of the unknown pressing in from all sides. The only sound was the distant hum of the Excalibur's engines, still running hot from the landing. The crew stepped onto the barren soil, their boots sinking slightly into the dust. The forest loomed ahead, dark and dense, with only the occasional flicker of light from the energy spikes above. In the distance, a group of figures emerged from the trees. Their features were angular, their bodies lithe, with skin that shimmered faintly in the dim light. These were the Corians. They were exactly as the stories had described them, a species with a grace and presence that was both otherworldly and regal. Their leader, Captain Lyra, stepped forward, her face haggard but determined. She was dressed in weathered armor, her eyes scanning the surroundings as though expecting an attack at any moment. "Commander Callan," she said, her voice sharp, "you've arrived just in time, but you don't have much time to waste. The Goraths are closer than you think. We need to leave. Now." Callan nodded but couldn't shake the uneasy feeling settling in his gut. "We're here to help," he said. "Where do you need us?" Lyra glanced toward the trees, her eyes narrowing. "We need to get to the underground city. It's the only place they won't find us, at least for now." "Then that's where we're going," Callan said, motioning for his crew to follow. "Lead the way." As they moved deeper into the forest, Ava, one of the crew members, turned to Callan. "Do you think they're really as desperate as they seem? The Chorians have been hiding for a long time. What if we're walking into something worse than we imagined?" Callan didn't answer immediately. He couldn't. There were too many unknowns. The Chorians seemed like they were fighting for their survival, but there was something in Lyra's eyes, a flicker of fear, that suggested they might be hiding more than they were letting on. As they approached the underground city, a chilling thought crossed Callan's mind. If the Goraths were as close as Lyra claimed, they might already be too late. The underground city loomed ahead, a hidden labyrinth carved into the rock. The air was thick with humidity, and the walls were covered in strange, glowing symbols that illuminated the dark corridors. As Commander Callan led his team deeper into the tunnels, the sense of unease grew heavier with every step. The Chorians moved swiftly ahead, their lithe forms blending with the shadows as they navigated the maze-like city. Captain Lyra, still at the front, moved with the practiced ease of someone who had spent years in hiding. "This way," Lyra urged, her voice low and strained. "We're not far now. The heart of the city is just ahead." Callan followed closely, his eyes scanning their surroundings. The city was eerily quiet, almost too quiet. He had expected sounds of life. Voices, footsteps, maybe the hum of technology. But instead, there was just the soft echo of their own movements. It was as if the city was holding its breath, waiting for something. "What happened here?" Lieutenant Harper asked, her voice almost a whisper. "This place looks deserted." Lyra glanced back at them, her face hardening. "This is all that's left of our people. We've been running for years, hiding from the Goraths. This city was once a thriving hub of Chorian culture and technology, but now it's just a tomb." The words hit Callan harder than he expected. To think that a whole species, once mighty and advanced, had been reduced to living like this, hidden away, constantly on the run, was a sobering thought. But there was something else in Lyra's eyes, something she wasn't telling them. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment, it seemed as though she was struggling with something deep within. "Tell me the truth," Callan said, stopping in his tracks. "What aren't you telling us?" Lyra hesitated, then finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "We found something here, something we should never have uncovered. It's part of the reason we're being hunted. The Goraths aren't just after us. They want what's buried beneath this city. And if they find it, we're all doomed." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of something much darker than they had imagined. Callan's mind raced. What could be buried under this ancient city that was so important to the Goraths? And why hadn't Lyra told them about it sooner? "I need to know what we're dealing with," Callan said, his voice firm. "If we're going to help you, we need all the information." Lyra nodded slowly. "There's a chamber deep within the city. It was once a place of knowledge, a repository of Chorian history and power. But when we uncovered it, we found something else, something ancient, more powerful than anything we've ever known. The Goraths have been hunting us for this power. They think it will give them control over the entire galaxy." Harper raised an eyebrow. "What kind of power?" Lyra's face was pale now, her expression haunted. "I don't know exactly. The chamber is filled with strange technology, ancient relics that we can't fully understand. But there is one object, a device, that, if activated, could rewrite the laws of the universe itself." "Rewrite the laws of the universe?" Ava asked, her voice skeptical. Lyra turned to face them, her eyes full of fear. "Yes, it's a weapon, but it's also something else. We don't know if it's a tool for creation or destruction, but the Goraths want it. If they find it, they will use it to crush every other species and control all of space." A chill ran down Callan's spine. This was no longer just about rescuing an alien race. The fate of the galaxy itself was now on their shoulders. "We need to get to that chamber first," Callan said, his voice resolute. "Before the Goraths do." Lyra nodded gravely. "It's not going to be easy. The path to the chamber is guarded by traps, ancient defenses that are still active. We've lost many of our own trying to get there. Then we'll make sure we don't lose anyone else," Callan said, his voice steady. "Lead the way." The group pressed forward, and the deeper they went, the more the atmosphere seemed to shift. The tunnels narrowed, the walls closing in around them. The glowing symbols on the walls pulsed with an eerie light, casting long, strange shadows across their path. Callan could feel the weight of history pressing down on him, as if the city itself was watching their every move. The sense of unease was growing, and with it, his doubts. They were about to uncover something that no one, not even the Quarians, fully understood, and that could either save them or doom them all. As they reached the final chamber, the air grew colder. The door to the chamber stood before them, ancient and covered in strange markings. Lyra hesitated, her eyes darting from the door to Callan. "This is it," she said quietly. "Whatever happens inside, you need to understand that we can't control what's down there. We've only barely scratched the surface of its power." Callan nodded. He was prepared to face whatever lay ahead, but there was a gnawing feeling in his gut that he couldn't shake. The stakes had been raised, and now they were dealing with forces beyond anyone's comprehension. "Let's go," he said, pushing aside his fears. Lyra stepped forward, placing her hand on the door. It creaked open with an eerie groan, revealing a chamber that was both magnificent and terrifying. The walls were lined with strange, glowing devices, and at the center of the room stood a pedestal. On that pedestal rested the object they had all come here for, a small, intricately carved device that hummed with power. Ava's breath caught in her throat. "What is it?" Lyra's eyes flickered with fear. That is the heart of the Quarians' legacy, and it's the reason we're all in danger." Before Callan could respond, a loud crash echoed from behind them. The doors to the chamber slammed shut with a deafening bang. They spun around, only to see the Gorath Empire's soldiers emerging from the shadows, weapons drawn. "It's too late," Lyra whispered. "They found us." The chamber's atmosphere shifted from eerie silence to a deadly tension in the blink of an eye. The air was thick with the threat of violence as the Gorath soldiers emerged from the shadows, their heavy footsteps echoing off the chamber's cold stone walls. They were massive, towering figures with armor that gleamed in the dim light. Their weapons, sleek and menacing, hummed with a deadly energy. Commander Callan immediately moved to position himself between his crew and the Goraths. His heart pounded, but his training kicked in, keeping his focus sharp. The Quarians were now just as much a part of his mission as humanity itself. He couldn't afford to fail them. "Take cover," he barked, and his team quickly scattered to the nearest walls, weapons raised, ready for whatever came next. Lyra, who had been at the forefront of their journey, now stood at the back of the chamber, her face a mixture of regret and determination. "I warned you," she said quietly, her voice heavy with the burden of what she knew. "But it's too late now." The Goraths advanced, their leader, a massive figure with a scar running across his face, stepped forward, the silver glow of his sword reflecting the chamber's strange lights. "You think you can stop us, humans?" The Gorath leader's voice was deep, filled with a cold, menacing confidence. "The device you're so desperate to protect will be ours. And once it is, you will all bow to the might of the Gorath Empire." Callan stood firm, his voice cutting through the tension. "You're not getting it. This is beyond your understanding. Leave now, and we might let you walk away. We won't hesitate to fight if you don't." The Gorath leader laughed, a deep guttural sound. "Your words are as weak as your resolve. You cannot comprehend the power you're standing before." He lifted his sword, the energy humming louder now, a sign of what was to come. Callan made a split-second decision. "Take them down. Don't hold back." The firefight erupted in an instant, the battle for survival. The Excalibur crew members, well-trained and ready, moved swiftly, taking cover behind the structures in the chamber. Ava, the sharpshooter, took a position near the chamber's entrance and opened fire, her shots precise, aiming to disable the Gorath's weapons first. The Corian exiles, though smaller in number, fought with a fierceness that matched the crew's. They had nothing left to lose. But the Goraths were relentless. The sheer strength of their assault caught the crew off guard. One of their soldiers launched an energy blast, striking a nearby Corian and sending him crashing to the ground. Another Chorian rushed forward to help, but a Gorath soldier cut him down before he could get close. The Corians were strong, but they had been living in hiding for too long. They weren't fully prepared for the strength of the Gorath forces. "Cover the Corians," Callan shouted. "Harper, take out their reinforcements. Ava, on me." Ava nodded without hesitation, her rifle aimed at the enemy forces as they continued to pour into the chamber. The Corians were fighting with everything they had, but Callan could see the fear in their eyes. They were outmatched, and it was getting worse. The Gorath leader, still standing tall, raised his sword high, and the power surged through it, crackling with dark energy. "This ends now," he growled, launching himself toward the pedestal where the device lay. "No," Lyra cried, her voice breaking through the chaos. She dove forward, her own weapon raised, but she was too far away. The Gorath leader was closing in on the device. Callan's heart raced. They couldn't let him reach it. "Harper, now," Callan ordered. Harper, who had been providing cover fire from a distance, didn't hesitate. She fired a concentrated shot from the Excalibur's blaster, striking the Gorath leader's sword, causing it to vibrate violently in his grip. The leader growled in frustration and spun around to face her, his glowing weapon crackling with energy. "Your puny weapons can't stop me," he shouted, raising his sword for a lethal strike. But Callan saw the opening. "Now, Ava." Ava's rifle fired in unison with Callan's command, the bullet piercing through the Gorath leader's armor and striking him directly in the chest. The leader stumbled back, roaring in pain, but his armor absorbed much of the shot's force. He was still standing, but clearly weakened. Lyra didn't waste a moment. She dashed forward, weapon raised, and in one swift move, fired directly at the energy core of the Gorath leader's armor. The blast was enough to bring him to his knees, his sword falling to the floor with a heavy clatter. "Retreat," the Gorath leader shouted, his voice filled with fury and pain. The remaining Goraths, seeing their leader fall, hesitated, just long enough for the crew to gain the upper hand. "Push forward," Callan yelled, and his team responded with a renewed sense of determination. The Goraths were falling back, retreating into the shadows of the chamber, but not without taking a few Chorians with them. The battle was won. For now. The aftermath. The chamber was littered with debris, and the echoes of the battle slowly faded into a heavy silence. The crew of the Excalibur gathered near the pedestal, their eyes darting toward the device that lay at the center of the room. The Gorath leader's body was sprawled at the base of the pedestal, his breathing labored but still alive. He was the only one left of his forces. Callan stood over him, his weapon drawn but not aimed at the leader. "Why?" Callan asked. "Why do you want this power so badly?" The Gorath leader sneered through gritted teeth, his voice weak but filled with venom. "The galaxy is ours to control. You, the Corians, humanity. You're just ants. All we want is what's ours. And this device, it will give us everything. You'll see. We'll reshape everything in our image." Callan narrowed his eyes. "I don't think so." With one swift movement, he lowered his weapon. It was over. For now. Lyra stepped forward, her face a mixture of exhaustion and relief. "We need to destroy it," she said quietly. "The device can't fall into their hands, or anyone's hands. For that matter, it's too powerful." Callan nodded. "I agree. We'll make sure it's destroyed." As the crew gathered around the device, the weight of what they had just been through settled in. They had won the battle, But the war was far from over. The Goraths would return, and this time, they might not be so easy to defeat. The fate of the galaxy was in their hands, and the fight for survival had only just begun. The chamber was eerily quiet now, the only sounds coming from the faint hum of the glowing device in the center. The Gorath leader, still breathing but incapacitated, lay crumpled against the pedestal, his hand twitching weakly at his side. Callan stood over him, his mind racing, the weight of the situation pressing down harder than ever before. "We need to act fast," Callan said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "If the Goraths come back, we won't get another chance." Lyra nodded, her face pale but determined. "We have to destroy it. The device can't be allowed to fall into anyone's hands, not the Goraths, not us. It's too dangerous." The crew of the Excalibur gathered around the pedestal, looking down at the device that had sparked such a dangerous battle. It was no bigger than a small chest, but the energy it radiated was unlike anything any of them had encountered before. The symbols etched into its surface glowed faintly, almost as though they were alive, pulsating with a power that felt ancient and otherworldly. Harper, the team's tech expert, stepped forward, examining the device closely. "It's not something I've ever seen before," she murmured. "But if what Lyra says is true, this could change everything. We have to be careful." "Careful?" Lyra's voice shook with emotion. "If you don't destroy it, the galaxy will burn. The Goraths will use it to rewrite reality itself. You don't understand what you're dealing with." Callan took a deep breath, trying to focus through the chaos swirling in his mind. They'd come this far, fought and bled to protect the Quarians, but now they were at a crossroads. Destroying the device would mean abandoning a power that could save humanity, a power that could shift the balance of the universe. But would it be worth the risk? Was it better to have it destroyed, ensuring it couldn't be misused, no matter who controlled it? He looked around at his crew, each one as weary as he was, yet determined. They had already made too many sacrifices. Could they afford to make another one? "I'm not going to let the Goraths win," Callan finally said, his voice resolute. "But I'm also not going to let this thing destroy us. We need a plan." Harper, still analyzing the device, looked up. "I think there's a way to disable it, but it's going to require me to access its core. If I'm wrong about how this thing works, I could trigger it. There's a chance it could backfire, and we'll lose everything." The room fell silent. The weight of Harper's words hung heavy in the air. It was a gamble, a decision that could either save them all or doom them to the unknown. But there was no other option now. They had to act. "What's the alternative?" Callan asked, his voice quiet but firm. "If we don't try to disable it, we know the Goraths will come back, and they'll stop at nothing to use it. We've already seen what they're capable of." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes filled with both hope and fear. "If Harper can disable it, there's a chance we can secure it somewhere safe. We'll have to keep it hidden from both the Goraths and ourselves. If it's allowed to exist, we may be no better than the monsters we're fighting." Callan nodded, looking over at his crew. They'd made it this far together. Whatever the risks, they couldn't turn back now. "Harper," he said, turning to her, "do it. But be careful." Harper gave a single nod. "Understood. But if I fail, if anything goes wrong, don't blame me." "We won't," Callan said, watching as she approached the device. "We're in this together." The moment of truth. Harper carefully knelt beside the pedestal, her fingers running across the surface of the device as she tried to decipher its mechanisms. The glow from the symbols flickered, casting strange, shifting shadows across the room. For a moment, it seemed as though the device was alive, responding to her touch, to her presence. The tension in the chamber grew, and even the Quarians stood silently in the background, watching with bated breath. "This is insane," Harper muttered to herself as she slowly removed a panel from the device. "There's no language I recognize here, but it's clear this is far beyond anything the Quarians could have built. They weren't just hiding from the Goraths. They were hiding from the power inside this thing. "Just focus," Callan said, his eyes darting between Harper and the still weak Gorath leader. The Goraths wouldn't stay down for long. They had to make this work. "We're counting on you." Harper's hands worked faster now, her brow furrowed in concentration. She carefully detached a series of wires and components, her fingers steady despite the tension in the air. It felt like time itself was slowing down. Each click and hum of the device felt like a countdown to disaster. And then, without warning, the device flared brightly, and the chamber was flooded with a searing light. Everyone froze. "Harper!" Callan shouted, stepping forward. But Harper wasn't panicking. She looked up at him, her face calm despite the flashing lights. "It's working," she said, her voice surprisingly calm. "I've triggered a failsafe. We're shutting it down." For what felt like an eternity, the entire room vibrated with energy, the glow from the device growing brighter and brighter. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light dimmed. The hum of power ceased, and the air seemed to relax as the tension lifted. Harper stepped back, wiping sweat from her brow. "It's done. The device is neutralized." The room fell silent once again. The fallout. Lyra let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. "You did it. It's over. The device is no longer a threat." Callan's eyes stayed on the device. It was still there, still as dangerous as it had been before, but it was dormant now. They had contained it for now. "That doesn't mean it's safe," Callan said softly. "We still don't know the full extent of its power. We need to get it away from here. We can't let anyone else have it." Lyra agreed. "Not even us. The galaxy, the Corians, humanity. We all have to move forward without this burden." Callan looked over at his team, his mind made up. "We'll take it with us, but we'll find a place where it can't hurt anyone. And when the time comes, we'll destroy it completely." Lyra's eyes softened. "You have my word that I'll help you do that." Callan nodded. "Then let's get ready. The Goraths will be back. We'll need to be prepared." The team turned to leave the chamber, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Behind them, the now dormant device remained, its dark promise of power lingering like a shadow. The danger wasn't over. But one thing was certain. The fight to protect humanity and the galaxy was far from finished. And whatever the cost, they would face it together. The air outside the chamber felt different, colder, heavier. The crew of the Excalibur moved cautiously through the abandoned halls of the ancient Corian stronghold, their minds still grappling with the sheer magnitude of what they had just encountered. The device was now in their possession, neutralized but still radiating an unsettling energy. It was only a matter of time before the Goraths came for them again. "Where do we go now?" Ava asked, her voice a mix of exhaustion and uncertainty. She had been on edge ever since the battle, her rifle still gripped tightly in her hands. The tension wasn't easing, and the feeling of being hunted by the Goraths weighed heavily on them all. "We need to find a safe place, a place no one can trace us to," Callan said. "This war isn't over. The Corians may have been wiped out, but the Goraths are still out there. And now they know we have their prize." Lyra, walking silently beside him, shook her head. "The Goraths aren't the only danger anymore. That device, whatever it is, could be a problem too." Callan glanced at her. "You think it's more dangerous than the Goraths?" Lyra hesitated for a moment. "I'm not sure, but the power it holds. It could corrupt anyone who tries to wield it. We have to destroy it. We can't risk letting it fall into the wrong hands." The weight of her words settled in, and for a brief moment, the crew fell silent, each of them lost in their thoughts. They were on the edge of something much bigger than they could have ever imagined. The ancient device wasn't just a weapon. It was a key to something far more dangerous than they could comprehend. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet trembled, shaking the walls of the stronghold. Dust and rubble fell from the ceiling as if the building itself was coming to life. The crew immediately dropped into defensive positions, weapons raised. What was that? Harper whispered, her voice barely audible over the rumble. Before Callan could respond, a low, rumbling voice echoed through the hall. "You cannot escape." The voice was deep, ancient, and filled with an unsettling power that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end. Callan's heart raced. "Who's there?" From the shadows, an enormous figure stepped forward, its form cloaked in darkness. The creature was unlike anything the crew had ever seen, a blend of organic and mechanical parts, its body a grotesque fusion of metal, skin, and glowing energy. The figure was tall, almost monstrous in size, with a face obscured by a helmet that flickered with strange symbols. The creature's voice boomed again, shaking the walls. "I am the guardian of the core. You have disturbed the balance of this place. You will not leave." The crew exchanged worried glances, unsure of how to respond to this new threat. The Goraths were bad enough, but now they faced something even more powerful, something ancient, something tied directly to the device they had just neutralized. "What do you want from us?" Callan demanded, his weapon still raised, but his hands shaking slightly. "The device is not to be tampered with," the Guardian intoned, its voice growing colder. "You cannot comprehend the power it holds. It was never meant for your kind to wield." The crew tightened their grips on their weapons. They were in no position to fight something like this. But they had no choice. "You've made a grave mistake," the Guardian continued, "and now you will pay the price." With a sudden movement, the Guardian raised its hand, and a pulse of dark energy shot toward them. The force of the blast sent them scrambling for cover. The walls cracked and buckled under the pressure, and the once sturdy hall began to crumble. "This place is falling apart," Harper shouted, her eyes wide with fear. "We have to get out of here. Now." Callan nodded. "Everyone, fall back. Get to the ship now." The crew sprinted through the crumbling hallways, dodging blasts of energy from the Guardian. The ancient stronghold was collapsing around them, as if the entire structure itself was reacting to the Guardian's wrath. The floor beneath them cracked, sending massive chunks of stone tumbling into the abyss below. They reached the main exit, the air outside fresh, but filled with the distant sounds of destruction, as the building collapsed behind them. But even as they made it to safety, they knew the danger wasn't over. The Guardian wasn't going to let them leave without a fight. "Keep moving," Callan shouted, urging the crew forward as they made their way to the Excalibur. But as they approached the ship, the ground rumbled once again. The Excalibur's engines hummed, but the shadow of the Guardian loomed large, far too close for comfort. "You can't escape," the Guardian's voice echoed, chilling them all to the bone. Callan's mind raced. There was only one option. They needed to leave before the Guardian could follow them. They had no time to waste. "Launch the ship, Harper," Callan ordered. Harper didn't hesitate. On it. The engines roared to life as the crew scrambled onto the ship. The Excalibur lifted off, its hull shuddering as it broke free from the planet's gravity. But as they ascended, Callan couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't left the Guardian behind. Something told him that the battle was just beginning. The crew watched in silence as the distant Corian stronghold began to crumble and fall into the darkness below. They had narrowly escaped death, but at what cost? Lyra's voice cut through the quiet tension. "We've made a powerful enemy." "We haven't just made an enemy," Callan said quietly. "We've unleashed something we can't control. We've disturbed something ancient, and now it's after us." A new danger loomed on the horizon, darker and more powerful than the Goraths themselves. The crew had barely escaped the destruction of the Corian stronghold, but they couldn't outrun the shadows of the past. The Guardian, whatever it was, wouldn't let them forget the price of their actions. And whatever lay ahead, the fight for the future of humanity and the galaxy was far from over. The Excalibur surged through the dark expanse of space, its engines roaring as it pushed past asteroid fields and remnants of ancient star systems. The crew was silent, each lost in their thoughts. The fight for survival against the Goraths, the discovery of the powerful device, the terrifying Guardian. It was all a whirlwind of danger that they could barely comprehend. But there was one thing they knew for certain now. They were not safe. They had barely escaped the crumbling ruins of the Corian stronghold, but something far more dangerous than the Goraths was chasing them. The Guardian was relentless, an ancient force awakened by their intrusion, and it would not rest until they paid the price for disturbing its sacred domain. "Where are we headed?" Lyra asked, breaking the silence. She stood near the cockpit, her eyes fixed on the view of the stars outside the ship. Her voice was quiet, but the weight of her words hung in the air. Callan stood beside her, looking out at the vast emptiness. "We need to get far away from the Goraths, the Guardian, from everything. We need a place where we can think, plan, and figure out how to destroy that device for good." Ava, who had been monitoring the ship's sensors, turned toward them. "We're being followed." Callan's heart skipped a beat. He rushed to the console. "How far?" "Too close," Ava replied, her fingers flying across the control panel. "I'm picking up energy signatures. Something big. It's tracking us." Lyra clenched her fists. The Guardian. Harper, seated at the back of the ship, looked up, her face grim. "We can't outrun it. We need a strategy. The Guardian's not just some creature we can fight. It's part of something much bigger." Callan's mind raced. The Guardian's power was unlike anything they had ever faced. They couldn't simply fight it head-on, and even if they destroyed the device, that might not stop the Guardian from hunting them down. "We don't have a choice," Callan said, his voice firm. "We have to find a way to fight back, to stop it." There was a heavy silence as everyone on the ship considered his words. They all knew the odds, but they had faced impossible odds before. A sudden alert blared through the ship. Ava's voice broke through the tension. "It's getting closer." "Battle stations," Callan barked. "Prepare for combat. We need to hold them off long enough to get to the last place we can hide. The Crimson Nebula. It's an ancient place, full of debris, hidden from regular scans. It might be the only place we can regroup." Lyra nodded. "We'll have to make a stand, then." "Harper, how's the ship's weaponry?" Callan asked. Harper's face was etched with concentration as she examined the ship's systems. "We've got enough to make a fight of it, but we're going to need more than just firepower. We're dealing with something out of our league here." "You're right," Callan said, his mind spinning as he thought through their options. "We need to disable the Guardian's ability to track us. Ava, can you override its tracking system?" Ava's eyes flickered as she worked. "I can try, but it's not going to be easy. This thing is ancient, and its technology is beyond anything we've seen. But I'll do what I can." The ship shook as another energy blast hit them from behind. The Guardian's ship was closing in. "We're out of time," Lyra said, her voice urgent. "We need to move now." Callan clenched his jaw. "Harper, get ready to fire. Ava, override that tracker. Lyra, prepare to navigate us through the Crimson Nebula. We're making our stand there." The crew sprang into action, each person moving with purpose. There was no turning back now. The Excalibur was their last chance to survive, and they would not let it fall into the hands of the Guardian or the Goraths. The Excalibur angled sharply, heading toward the Crimson Nebula, a place known for its dangerous asteroid fields, thick ion storms, and hidden debris. The nebula could conceal them, but it could also be their grave if they didn't make it through in one piece. As they neared the nebula, the crew braced for impact. The Guardian's ship was almost upon them. "Ready, Callan," Harper said, her eyes focused on the weapon systems. "Hold on tight," Callan said, gripping the controls. "We're going to make this count." With a sudden jolt, the Excalibur entered the dense field of asteroids and dust that made up the Crimson Nebula. The ship swerved and dodged massive chunks of rock, the engines straining to keep them on course. The Guardian's ship, however, was relentless. its large form gliding smoothly through the storm as if it were born from the very nebula itself. Ava was working furiously at the console, her fingers moving faster than ever. "I've almost got it," she shouted. "I need a few more seconds." Callan's knuckles were white as he maneuvered the ship through the dense debris field. "We don't have that long, Ava. Give us what you've got." The Guardian ship fired again, but this time, Callan was ready. He made a sharp turn, avoiding the blast by mere inches, and came face to face with the hulking mass of the Guardian's vessel. Harper fired a volley of shots from the Excalibur's cannons, but the Guardian's ship absorbed the blasts, its energy shields flashing, but holding strong. "We need to disable that ship," Harper shouted. "There's no way we can win this in a straight-up fight." Callan thought for a moment, his mind racing. Then his eyes narrowed as an idea struck him. "Ava, I need you to overload the ship's engines. We'll use the Excalibur as a decoy." Ava glanced at him, understanding dawning. "You want me to make the engines look like they're going critical?" Callan nodded. "Exactly. The Guardian's ship will think we're about to explode. It'll back off, just long enough for us to make our escape." Ava worked quickly, inputting the necessary commands to make it look like the Excalibur was on the verge of self-destruction. "Done," she said, her voice tense. "Now we just need to hope it works." Callan took a deep breath. "Let's make it count." He pushed the Excalibur forward, sending the ship straight toward the Guardian's vessel. It was a desperate gamble. If it didn't work, they would all be dead. But if it did, it might just be enough to give them a chance. The Guardian's ship fired once more, but as the blast reached them, the Excalibur swerved sharply, its engines flashing like they were about to explode. The Guardian's ship hesitated for just a moment, and that was all they needed. In the next instant, Callan spun the Excalibur into a sharp turn and shot through the debris of the nebula. Behind them, the Guardian's ship slowed, unsure of what to do next. They were getting away. For now. The crew exhaled collectively as they pushed deeper into the nebula, away from the threat of the Guardian. But even as they put distance between themselves and their pursuers, Callan knew this was only temporary. The Excalibur had escaped the Guardian, this time. But the war was far from over. And somewhere out there, the shadow of the ancient power was still looming, waiting for its next move. The crew had no choice but to prepare for whatever came next. They were humanity's last hope, and they would not fail.